Right, let's get into the big one, the domino at the start of the chain for all the roster moves in this ROSTERMANIA, and there's a lot to unpack here when it comes to Falcons. Falcons last year absolutely blundered the ROSTERMANIA. They literally got one of the players that they wanted, maybe two if you count Snappy, and they have been absolute horseshit for this year. They've literally done nothing. They couldn't even win a DreamHack Open, and they didn't qualify for either of the two majors. And I actually do think that's inexcusable. You can say that you didn't have the players you want. You can say that the roles were a little bit iffy here and there, but you still have world-class players on this lineup, and I really don't think there's an excuse to not be qualifying for two back-to-back majors. And unfortunately, it looks like Falcons are going to have a slightly less painful, but still repeat of last year, where they've absolutely bungled their ROSTERMANIA, and it looks like the only player on their list they've been able to get is Nico. Now, Nico is obviously really good, but the other key target they wanted was Monte, and that would have brought along with him Gym Fat from Mouse. But without Monte, they obviously didn't get Gym Fat, and a lot of other players didn't want to commit to the project due to VRS. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with VRS, starting from 2025, all tournament invites for every single tournament, and most importantly the major, are going to be solely determined by Valve's rankings. If you don't have a core roster from this year, you're going to be starting from scratch with little to no points. So only really a super team is going to be able to claw their way up the rankings in time to get an invite for the major. Because of that, that basically forced Falcons to try and get a core from another team. And they looked at FAZE and they looked at Mouse, both of them said no, and they've ended up with Heroic. So Falcons look like they're going to be adding Dexter, Kixan and Tessus to play alongside Nico and Magisk, and I actually don't hate this. This is a very balanced roster in terms of roles. Nico and Magisk are going to slot into Shush and Nurse's spots quite well, I think. And I actually really like Kixan as an IGL. I think he's in the same class as Suhei as an IGL that should be leading an elite team sometime within the next 2 years. And Tessus is one of the most solid role players in the world. The question mark for me here is around Dexter, because apparently Heroic actually wanted to bench Dexter and he's only still on this core so that the org could sell them to Falcons. Layer that on top of the fact that Monte is guaranteed to come into this team, and there's just going to be a lot of shadows over Dexter, and his performance might suffer as a result of that. Now, I still think that this team should at least be making playoffs of the majority of the events in 2025 once they get everybody bedded into the system. This is still a world-class team with world-class players, and Heroic were pretty solid throughout 2024, and now you got Nico and Magisk, which are like probably the only two upgrades you could have possibly made on Nerds and Shush. Even if this isn't the roster that any of these players wanted, they just need to put their head down like professionals, get on with it, and I really think they can win a trophy if they all just lock in. Overall, giving this roster move a C, and there's so many questions over if Sonic and Kixan are going to work together. Is Magic's going to phone it in? Is Nico going to phone it in? How's Dexter going to cope with all of these extra pressures surrounding him? And there's this whole narrative that I have that Sonic's actually a fraud. So we'll see how Falcons do over the course of 2025. I still think they should be going into playoffs with this roster. Once they get Monte, should definitely be a title contender. Right, going into my favourite move from this ROSTERMANIA, it's actually going to be FaZe losing Rops but signing a Liege. This is something that I have wanted for months. I've literally dreamed about it. I've been telling everybody about FaZe to sign a Liege. It would be a no-brainer move. When this move broke, I can't explain to you how excited I was. See, FaZe's issue this year, as I touched on earlier in the video, is that they just have way too many passive players on this team. They had Rops, Brokey and Frozen on the same team. Rops and Frozen are both very passive riflers who have their impact in the late round. The reason why they worked together so well on Mouse is because Mouse had Woxic, who was one of the best AWPers in the world that year, and probably the most aggressive we've ever seen in Tier 1. Now on a team with Brokey, who is actually also a passive AWPer, despite what people might think, all of his impact comes in the late round, and it comes in the chaos that his team was able to cause for him to be able to pull off some of these incredible clutches. It basically forced Brokey and Rops to go outside of their comfort zone, and it just didn't work. Both of their performances have been hindered by it, Brokey especially. Frozen actually played alright, but you can see the effect in FaZe's results. They just haven't been able to put up anything good this year. Liege is one of the best aggressive riflers in the world. He's been nominated in HLTV's top 3 for Opener of the Year. I definitely think he's number 3 behind Donk and Nico, and he's still a well-cast player who I think is still in his prime. I really think people have forgotten who this guy is. Just because he's been trapped in purgatory and complexity, we can't ignore these numbers. I mean, he's literally putting these 4 guys in his backpack just to have any chance of beating any good teams. I think Liege solves FaZe's key issue this year, which was the lack of a true aggro rifler the things that this guy's going to be able to do for them at the start of the round is really going to give Frozen and Proki the space they need to operate in the late round and pull off their clutches and pull off their highlights. And I really think that this is the best move that FaZe could have made. And they're not losing any firepower either. Rox is one of the best riflers in the world, but so is Elise. Elise has also brings something to the team that I think has been sorely missed since Twist's departure, and that is his mid-round calling. Elise is famous for having a very strong view on how the game should be played, and he's always been a very vocal player in all of his teams. I think when FaZe lost Twist, it kind of forced Frozen and Rox once again to step outside of their comfort zones, and it just hasn't worked. Elise fits into his spots a lot more naturally, and he's going to be able to alleviate a lot of tactical pressure off Karrigan, and obviously all of that early round pressure is going to fall to him. So overall, I give this move an S. I think that after a couple of months, once Elise just bedded into the FaZe system, FaZe are going to be back to their trophy winning ways and maybe will be a contender for the first major. Let's talk about the now reigning major champions for Spirit, who are going to be making no changes. Spirit in the major was bad, actually, because it means that they've not made any changes to their roster, which I think they are in dire need of if they want to remain as one of the elite Counter-Strike teams. Truth is that Spirit do not play good Team CS, and anybody who has watched more than a handful of their games and has a good understanding of CS can see that. Their mid-round calls are questionable, their tactics have gotten stale, and it took over a year for them to actually change what they were doing once they got sussed out by the top teams. And they really heavily rely on Donk just being the best player in the world, the best player to ever touch the game, as well as Shiro being a world-class orbiter to get anything done against the elite teams. Now, in terms of who I would have replaced on Spirit, a lot of people automatically look towards Somtex because he's the anchor of the team, and we really need to change this narrative about just switching out the hard anchor anything things are going wrong. Somtex is 17, he got promoted from the academy at the same time as Donk. He was a rookie this year as well, and like he's been fine. He's very rarely been a reason they've lost a game, and I think he's done his job, and I think he'll continue to improve. The player I would have gone to remove, actually, would be Magix. Now, a lot of you are going to be thinking, whoa, why are we removing Magix? This guy literally just won in the major, and let me introduce you to a thing called recency bias. If you only watch the semi-finals and the finals of the major, you'll think that Magix is the second star of Spirit, ahead of Shiro, but these are two life games in a year full of red. Over the course of the year, Magix has only been able to post a 1.01 rating. He's barely positive. And he looks absolutely nothing like his former self before Donk came into the team. When Donk did join Spirit in July of last year, Magix definitely took the heaviest hit in terms of his roles. He moved out of his aggressive rifler spots and into more supportive spots, playing as the second anchor on the team, and it just doesn't suit him. I mean, this guy just has a 0.9 rated map in every best of 3 series. Like, he's just not been good, and I definitely think when Spirit have looked really bad, and in the games where they don't really need somebody else to step up alongside him, where he was having an off game, you really wanted Magix to be that kind of third star behind Shiro, and like, he's just often at the bottom of the scoreboard with Chopper. I really think he's just sandbagged this team so much. Now, in terms of who I would replace Magix with, everybody's minds can instantly go to Kyosuke, the 16-year-old prodigy on Spirit's Academy team, who is currently putting up donk-like numbers in Tier 2, and I would not go for him. The kid just isn't ready yet. He's only just now getting his taste of somewhat good competition in Tier 2, and yes, the numbers are really good, but he just needs more time. I think a lot of people forgot that Donk played a full year in Tier 2 with Spirit Academy, and then 6 months with his Spirit main team, playing against Tier 1.5 and Tier 2 competitions, bedded himself into the system before they signed Shiro in January and went on that Katowice run. He had 6 months to bed himself into the main team. Kyosuke won't have that. Roles also just don't work. Kyosuke is another very aggressive rifler. He doesn't go in first like Donk, but he's always second. And while that might work a bit on the T side, he's going to take such a heavy hit on the CT side, but I don't think it would be worth sacrificing him for it, when he looks like he could become one of the best riflers in the world one day. Instead, who I would have gone for actually would be Result. Result has had a massive glow up in the last 2 years. When I first saw him playing on VP Academy and later Falls, he just looked very raw, very nervous and not very comfortable in his roles. And he's now evolved into one of the best kind of half anchors, half lurker players in all of the CIS region. He's had a rocky year in terms of his team performances. He started off on Aurora, who looked poised to make a run to a major or show up some teams if they were ever able to get qualified for an elite event. But it didn't end up happening. That team was honestly very weird. And then he ended up on 9 Pandas, who are just fucking awful, and he's just had to put them in their backpack for them to win any games. That being said, he's by far been the star of every team he's been on, despite playing definitely not hard anchor roles, but as I say, half anchor after playing that second 2-man bomb site. And I think he'd be a much needed firepower addition to Spirit, just so Dong has somebody else to play with sometimes. And it's going to be much more suited to the roles of Magic. So overall, I give this a D. I really don't like the fact that Spirit have not made a change, especially for Magics. I have my reservations about Chopper's leadership as well, but I'll give him some more time on that. I think Spirit are going to be really inconsistent heading into 2025. Once again, any trophies they do win are just going to be powered by Dong, and they're definitely going to crumble in a couple of key moments when Dong isn't able to put them all in his backpack. Right, I'm being a little bit sneaky with this one, and I'm actually going to throw in Bait's move of removing Captain Kirker and adding in Kenzisor into the primary portion of this list. Now, some of you might not even know who Bait are, but I've broken my ranking rules here and included Bait in this list despite them being a bit of a lesser team, because I think people really need to pay attention to this move. This is an incredible pickup by Bait and is probably the single biggest slam dunk upgrade that any team has made. Bait have been solid in tier 2 throughout the year, but they've been unable to capitalize on their potential. They could have been a dark horse for maybe qualifying for the major in Shanghai, but they just really didn't deliver on any of their potential. Captain Kirker has struggled throughout the entire year, and he's only been able to post a 0.92 rating, and that's primarily against tier 2 opposition, which just isn't good enough. Ide bringing in Kenzisor hasn't played a lot against some of the best teams even in tier 2, but his numbers are absolutely incredible. They're up there with Makazi, with Kyosuke, with all of these emerging star riflers within tier 2. This is an absolute slam dunk upgrade for Bait. Like, the firepower upgrade, I don't even know how else to say it. Like, it's just a massive net positive for them. And I think this is going to make them a really dangerous team in 2025. If they are able to slip into that top 24 and get some invites to S-tier events, they could be a potential upset team in the early stages of those events. I think if Kenzisor keeps going on the path he's currently on, he's going to become a player similar to Makazi, similar to Kyosuke, these kind of really cool aggressive riflers that look like they're going to become some of the best in the world. I'll give this move a B+. I obviously couldn't give an A or an S because of the level that it's at. And I've even broken my ranking rules a little bit here by giving them a B. But this is such good GMing by Bait. Fair play to whoever made this move. This is honestly one of the best moves of the entire roster season. Now, I'm recording this at 2 PM on the 31st of December, and as of this moment in time, there's still no news, no even rumours about what Complexity are going to be doing. Now they've lost the Legion and bench flop here. So they're not going to be included in this video, but when that move does go out, I probably will make a whole separate video explaining the different routes that Complexity could have gone, and then the one they actually did go down in the end. So make sure you're liked and subscribed so you get notified when that video comes out. Right, now we're going to be going into a quick fire round. I'm just going to be rattling off some of the moves from some of the lesser teams in the space. I'm just giving them a quick ranking and a couple of thoughts on if they're good and if they're bad. So starting off with one that's a little bit close to home, it's going to be Monte benching Krasnau and Key and bringing in Gizmi and Ryu. And overall, I give this move a solid C. I obviously really like Gizmi. He comes from the UK scene. I've played against him on LAN and been battered by him. And I've really seen his rise from literal pug star to a very solid IGL within tier 2. He can put up numbers when he needs to. Ryu as well is a very strong big site anchor. He has incredible mechanics. He does just beam people when they come into the site. And I think overall this is going to make Monte a bit better than they have been this year. The Hades IGL experiment hasn't worked. He's honestly a tier 1 AWPer when he just looks at his crosshair. Next up, you've got Big, finally benching Rigon and Searson. I don't know why they picked up Rigon in the first place. I do think he's a very good player, but why are you picking up one of the most aggressive and crazy riflers in the world and trying to turn him into an anchor? Searson as well is just an absolute fraud, and we've known this for years. I don't know why he's back on this lineup, and the fact that he replaced Mantu, who's actually a fairly solid AWPer, is just absolutely mental. Big need to go international if they want to be a competitive team in 2025. I think they should pick up Jota and bring back Mantu so that they can have an anchor who can be aggressive, as Jota does that quite naturally. And Mantu's just a very solid AWPer. He's not going to be too expensive and he's going to be able to set Jota up. Overall, I give him this move a D just because Big are shit. These two players are shit. And the likelihood is that they're going to stay German. I think the rumour is they're going to pick up QB and Hyped, which, man alive, what are we doing? On the CS side of things, you've got BetBoom making some much needed changes. They're going to be getting rid of Nafni and Chiron, and the talk of the town is that they're going to be bringing in Boomich and Axel. This is a net positive for BetBoom, no doubt. They got some really good players on them. Magnojez in particular looks like he could be a future top 20 player. Sorte's always been solid, and Siren looked very good in that Antwerp run from Spirit. Nafany's a known fraud. We've known he's a fraud for years. He was shit on C9, he was shit when Gambit had to play on stages, and he was shit in Bet Boom. This guy cannot call a good game of Counter-Strike, and he crumbles under no pressure. Chiron, unfortunately for me, is a massive what could have been. When he was playing in Tier 2, this guy was fucking mental. He was literally picking up donk numbers. When he came into VP, he was neutered quite a bit by the James system, and I think he just lost his confidence and never got it back. So as good as I think he was, I do think that change was needed. Sal hasn't really been able to regain his superstar form that he had in Gambit ever really, but he's still very solid, and Boomich is a far better IGL than Nafany was, so if these two moves do come to fruition, I'll give this a solid C+. It should improve Bet Boom quite a bit, and they could become an upset team at these Tier 1 events. Next up, you got the men from down under, Flyquest, finally getting rid of Alistair and bringing in Regali. Now, they had to get rid of Alistair. He has by far been the weakest player on the team and definitely a problem. He's really struggled to find impact. His improvement has simply just come at too slow of a rate, and he's just been a massive hindrance for them. He had that one pop-off performance at Atlanta, which was cool to see, but he just disappeared in every other big moment that this team had. Now, I definitely think that Dexter has had a bad history when it comes to being able to utilize AWPers properly, but I don't even think that Alistair was that good in his previous teams. Now, Flyquest were always going to bring in a European AWPer, otherwise what is the point of getting rid of a guy that you have so much chemistry with? While they were certainly spoiled for options, they definitely probably would have somebody in their budget, and Regali's pretty decent. He had an okay time at OG, where he definitely wasn't the reason that they were shit. He definitely put up some alright numbers, and in his teams he's had after, his teams himself haven't been very stable, and he's still been alright. There are maybe some better players that they could have got instead of Regali, but it's still a massive firepower upgrade over Alistair, and I think a tactical upgrade too, and I think it's just going to add a whole other level to Flyquest's game, and they're going to be a little bit more potent than they were in this year, but they're not going to be winning a trophy anytime soon. Overall, I give this team a solid B-. I think it's going to improve Flyquest quite a bit, but they're not going to be anything special. Back in Tier 2 CIS region, we got Parivision removing Alpha, Patsy and Artfrost, and it looks like they're going to bring in Jame and Norbert and probably Yakindar as well. Now this is a tricky move for me. So I actually really like Alpha, and I think Artfrost is solid. Like, I mean, the guy that replaced him on Spirit was Shiro. Like, you know, he's one of the best AWPers in the world. There's not really much you can do about that. And I think Alpha is a really good young, fragging IGL who has a future if he works out some of his quirks. But Parivision have struggled a lot this year, and they will definitely do a change. The fact that it is Alpha does upset me a little bit, but it does make sense. If you're going to be bringing in James, he's going to AWP, so unfortunately that does mean that Artfrost is going to be out the door. I hope he goes to a good team. Like, this guy's generally really, really good. But the Patsy move is the one that gets me. If they do bring in the Kindar for Patsy, like, I don't like that. Patsy's actually been one of the bright spots for Parivision this year. He did really well to recover after his fucking horrendous couple months on Liquid. And you obviously can't have your Kindar and Patsy on the same team. They play the exact same play style. We tried that before on Liquid and it didn't work. And your Kindar just obviously hasn't been good for like a year. I kind of get it, and obviously I do want your Kindar to be able to try and regain his form and become one of the best riflers in the world again. But as things stand, I would want them to keep Patsy. So I'll give this move a C. It's going to improve Parivision no matter what. They've had a horrible year. I just hope they keep Patsy instead of bringing in your Kindar. And they could be an interesting team if they're able to secure any invites. Fnatic look like they're going to be benching Body, and the rumour right now is that they're going to be trying to get Fear from Passion UA. Now, Body has got to go. Fnatic have been absolutely fucking dreadful under his leadership, despite having some solid pieces. Despite all the shit that Blameth gets, he's a very, very good mechanical player, and I think he can bring a lot to a team if he's used correctly. Matty's is incredible, and I just think he hasn't really got the opportunity to shine properly on this lineup because of how bad they've been. He was definitely one of the better riflers in Tier 2 last year, and I think a lot of people who maybe didn't watch his time in Tier 2 don't understand how good this guy can be. Crims is still okay, I guess. And Nork is a solid AWPer. He's struggled a lot post-Apex, but I'm hoping that he's able to refund that dog in him. Now Body's going to be out of the team. Now, bringing in Fear is definitely a gamble. Passion UA have only had one event this year where they played top teams, and to be fair, it was the major where they definitely pulled off a couple of really good upset wins, and their playstyle had a lot to do with that. I think Fear is a really good IGL. I had the displeasure of running into him a lot this year with the team that I managed, K10, often playing Passion UA in these Tier 3 cups and getting absolutely wrecked by them. But the issue for me is that Fear strikes me as a very similar type of IGL to Cadian. And what I mean by that is he's going to be a great caller, he's going to be a great leader of a team, but people are going to have to buy into his version of Counter-Strike with no questions asked, otherwise it's not going to work. Now, is somebody like Crims, who's played the game for so long at a high level, going to be able to do that? Is BlameF going to be able to do that as someone who's formerly been in IGL and probably been thrown under the rug by a lot of his teams? Is not going to be able to do that and find his return to form? Like, these are the questions I'm going to be asking about this move. Overall, benching Body is a massive positive, and if the Fear move works out, Fnatic could be a very dangerous team in the opening stages of some of these extra events. So overall, I'm going to give this a D+. If it works out, this could easily be a B. I did have to miss some of the big names of this list. Obviously Complexity, like I mentioned before, but also Heroic and NIP. So I am planning to do individual deep dive videos on each of our new rosters. If you want to see them, make sure you like and subscribe. This video was a little bit rushed because I wanted to get it out kind of before all the ROSTERMANIA stuff died down. So there are a couple issues with it. Let me know what you thought about it, and thank you for watching.